Greetings of peace. Coming back at you with another video. Getting a lot of questions based on the information that I am putting out about the the Luciferians, the different extraterrestrial groups that are out there, and I'm getting a lot. I like the feedback. I like the feedback, whether it's positive or negative. That's good. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Not worried if I can handle the positivity and the negativity, because I know that the negative people are basically just dealing with different thought patterns that they have in their mind, and what it is they're kind of like getting mad at me because I'm challenging, their viewpoint, and I can understand that, because for you to take the energy to get on a computer and type out long statements about how this can't be true and this sounds crazy and blah 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 blah, really just basically shows that if you put the energy into that, then you basically it must have resonated with you, or it must have rubbed you the wrong way or something, because you put the energy in it to make sure that you had to just make that known. If it was really, really, truly crazy to you, you would just basically turn the video off and just don't ever watch them again and wouldn't comment at all. Like, if it was really, like, just totally BS, you wouldn't say anything. The fact that you respond to it means that it hit something in you, and it caused you to maybe react negatively, or not even negatively, but react out of anger or whatever. I mean, it may have caused you to do that, but at the end of the day, it's showing that you're learning something. Now, whether you like it or not. Now, what I'll say is, not to focus on the lower levels, but I kind of want to just throw that out there. But for those of you that are following me, I appreciate that, as far as you're following the information. And I'm glad that you're following the information, because I've got a lot of positive feedback too, so let me bring balance to it. I mean, I'm actually getting more positive feedback than negative. So I'm getting a lot of positive feedback in emails and people asking me different questions. But question came up, and I was asked, how would one know that they're communicating with a being that is in their best interest, based on the fact that the Luciferians act like they're gods and they act like they are creators? Then how would, like, say for instance, somebody like me that is able to communicate with beings on other levels, how would someone like me be able to know that I'm communicating with the being that has my best interest at hand? And that's a good question. That's a good question. I'm going to answer that by basically going into a little bit of information, and I will probably call this video like a part 2 to those of you that have seen my video, how I met my angels and my guides. This is going to kind of be like a part 2 to that, even though it's not going to be called how I met my angels and guides part 2. It's actually going to be called angels, but it's going to be a part 2 to that. And I'm going to explain to you some of my personal experiences in the last portion of the video. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background on angels and how they operate and exactly what they are on the spiritual realm, because there's a lot of confusion going on with angels and ascended masters and things of that level. Now, when you deal with angels, ascended masters, devils, Satanists, Luciferians, Anunnaki, Anu, all of these are titles. This is what you have to understand. All of these terms that I've just named, all the terms that I've named above, or what I've just said a minute ago, are all titles. Just like you would say president, senator, governor, sheik, prime minister. Those are all titles. They don't identify individuals or particular people. Well, that's the same way it goes when we deal with angels. Now, before I get into what I mean by how I met my guides, what I'm going to first say is I'm going to explain to you what an angel is. An angel is simply a messenger. If you look up the term angel in the dictionary and you go to the etymology of it and go to the Latin root, it actually traces back and it means messenger. That's it. That's it. Now, any extra definitions that people put on angels come from the advent of Christianity, as far as a being with a halo over his head and this light, and like all the Christian definitions of being with wings on their back and all that type of stuff. All of that was basically introduced with the advent of Christianity or whatever, as far as adding in these extra definitions. But to the ancients, when they spoke of angels, and you go to the root word of what it actually meant, it just means a messenger. So, with that being said, a human can be an angel, a reptilian can be an angel, A Gray can be an angel, or Romardian. An Etherian can be an angel. So what I'm pointing out to you is that there are different species of extraterrestrials and physical beings that can all take on various different titles depending on the situation. So when I talk about getting in contact and getting in tune with your angels, in essence, I'm speaking of building an alliance with a group of extraterrestrial beings. This is what I'm actually speaking of, because, and it's a reason why I'm saying this, because outside of yourself, this is what you have to understand. Outside of yourself, there is no God. Now, I know many people are going to be like, whoa, he just said that. But, I mean, I just got to keep it real. Outside of yourself, there is no God. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, as far as what the purest, truest form of what God or the Most High, as far as like what it means to us as humans, you're speaking of the higher aspect of you. And when you speak of the devil, as far as for humans, you're speaking of the lower aspect of you. So God and the devil exists within the mind. It exists within the body. It's talking about the higher self and the lower self. So there is no God on that sense. So when we talk about communicating with ascended masters, angels, and guides, you are in essence speaking about building an alliance with an entity that is not necessarily connected to your higher self or you. And I'm pointing this out for a reason. So when you get in contact with any entity, this is basically the point why I'm making this video. This is how you discern as to whether or not you want to listen to this advice. When you get in contact with any entity, look at this entity as a messenger. It's simply just a messenger. So this means that you can't put the Christianity religion mindset on these entities. You have to basically take these entities' messages, communication by communication, and you have to discern based on your higher self as to whether or not you want to listen to this message or you don't want to listen to this message. Because I've already basically walked you into the fact that outside of your higher self and your lower self, there is no God or creator, because the person that we thought was God that created us at one point, we found out through research and history that this is a group of extraterrestrial beings. The scriptures prove it. The scriptures prove it. They talk about the Nephilim. They talk about the Elohim. So the scriptures prove that these are just a group of extraterrestrial beings. So that means that our whole God concept has to change. Our whole concept of angels and stuff like that and demons have to change. And that's why I put out those videos about angels and demons. If you haven't watched it, you should watch those videos. Because I'm trying to get you to understand that really all of this is existing and within you. But when you talk about an angel and meeting your guides, as far as a guide that's going to guide you through this physical realm, you are speaking of building an alliance and a connection with the entity that is outside of your higher self. So when that entity brings you information, it's a messenger. So that's all it's doing, is bringing you information. So if that entity tells you something, you have to check that spirit or that entity. I think in the Bible it talks about testing the spirit to see if it is true. See, a spirit can be tested to see if it's true. But if you were getting into the occult and learning these things, you would find out that how to do that. If you were into the occult, you would find out how to test that spirit to see if it is true. So when an angel or a being or ET or whatever type of entity that you're communicating with, really they're all the same, is really going to always be an ET. And it's a reason for that. I'm going to do other videos. This is setting the tone for other videos. But it's always going to be, at the end of the day, if you're dealing with any type of guide or something outside of yourself, even when you say your ancestors, at the end of the day, when you say your ancestors, you could actually be speaking of an ET. Because we have ET inside of our genetics, which means that our ancestors could be extraterrestrials. Those of you that study Ifa and you deal with the Orishas, and you talk about the ancestors of Shango and, you know what I'm saying, and those different, and Oshun and Oya and all of those different Ifa entities, you're speaking still of extraterrestrials. You're actually speaking of reptilians. And I'm not saying there's nothing bad about this. What I'm trying to explain is that you have to learn how to build up a psychic self-defense, first of all, so that any information that comes to you, build up a psychic self-defense through working with your higher self and through meditating and building up your own energy. And you have to know that anything that comes to you as far as information, you have to make sure and check and make sure it's true. That's just like if I brought you a message and I say, well, I'm here to bring you a message on behalf of your mother. So if I say I'm here to bring you a message on behalf of your mother, you're going to test me. You're going to ask me certain questions as to like, okay, so if you bring in a message on behalf of my mother, so what about this? So what about that? You're going to ask me certain questions to make sure that I really even know your mother. So that's the same thing you have to do with these entities. You have to learn, and I'm going to do another video called The First Language. So look out for that video. It's going to be called The First Language. You have to learn how to communicate with these entities. And this is how you test the spirit to see as to whether or not it's true. So as far as building up a communication with angels, again, you're speaking of beings, ET beings, and there are good and bad ET beings. They're like I said in other videos, they're agreeable and disagreeable ET beings. So you have to be able to test this being to see if it's true. You have to learn how to test this being as far as in your communication to see if this being is tried, tested, and true. So that's going to do it for me as far as this brief video on communicating with angels. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to send me an email at 13sidesastrology@gmail.com. I thank you for watching and have a blessed and prosperous day.